Let's look at the next lesson, multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. Today we're going to learn how to multiply fractions, and this is actually, in my opinion, easier than adding and subtracting fractions. One thing I would like to point out really quickly is that we do not need the same denominators. Now let's take a look at this problem. We have 4/5 times 1/3. The denominators are different, but because it's a multiplication problem, we don't care. Now let's go over the steps really quickly. First step, multiply numerators. 4 times 1 is 4. Second step, multiply denominators. 3 times 5 is 15. There you have it. We are done. And of course, sometimes these fractions need to be simplified, but in this case, it can't be simplified, so we leave it as is. Let's do another example. 1/3 times 6/7. Now, before doing this example, I'm going to be teaching you another way of simplifying, and this works when we are multiplying fractions. It's a really cool thing. Let's look at 1/3. This number can't be simplified by itself. 6/7, this fraction cannot be simplified by itself. But what we can do is, if we can find a factor that a numerator or a denominator shares, we can simplify that way. And what I mean by that is, let's look at the 6 right here. This is a numerator, and this is a denominator, but both of these have the factor 3. So we can actually divide this by 3 and divide this by 3, as long as 1's on the top, the 6 is on top, and one of these numbers are on the bottom. The 3 is on the bottom. So what this does is that 6 divided by 3 is 2. So this becomes a 2 up here. 3 divided by 3 is 1. This becomes a 1 down here. And now we follow the same steps. Numerator times numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 7 is 7. So our answer is 2 7s. What this does is that we start with smaller numbers to multiply. So that makes the multiplying a lot easier. Let's move on. Multiplying whole numbers. Uh-oh, there's a whole number. What do we do? First of all, we have to change the whole number into a fraction. We went over this a little while ago. You might have forgotten, but it's very simple. You just put whole number over 1. Why does that work? 8 over 1 is the same thing as 8 divided by 1, which is the same thing as 8. So we're not changing this number, we're just rewriting it as a fraction. Now let's do the multiplication. 2 times 8, numerator times numerator, is 16. Denominator times denominator is 3. This is an improper fraction. We have to change that into a mixed number. 3 goes into 16 5 times. We're left with 3 times 5 is 15. We're left with 1. And we keep the denominator. We have 5 1/3. That's it. So I guess you can put the second step. Multiply as usual. And of course, simplify or change into a mixed number if needed. Another example. 12 times 3/4. 12 is not a fraction yet. We make it into a fraction. How do we do that? Make it over 1. Now, I noticed that 12 and the 4 have same factors. We can divide by 4 in both of these. One's a numerator, one's a denominator. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And now let's multiply. Numerator times numerator, 3 times 3 is 9. Denominator times denominator, 1 times 1 is 1. Let's simplify this. I'm sorry, not simplify. Let's change this into a mixed number. 1 goes into 9 9 times. Well, that's it. 9 divided by 1 is 9. Quite simple. Next part, multiply mixed numbers. Now the first step in these problems is to change them into improper fractions. And that's simple enough. We go around the world. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. We use the same denominator. This is the second fraction. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. Keep the same denominator. We get 4. Now we see if we can simplify. Do you see anything? 16 and the 4. These both have the factor of 4, so we can divide both of these by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now we can multiply across. Numerator times numerator. 4 times 11 is 44. 5 times 1 is 5. This is an improper fraction. Let's change that into a mixed number. 5 goes into 44 8 times. So it's 8 wholes. Remainder 4. And we keep the denominator. That's it. So step 2 would be just to simplify if you can. And then step 3, multiply as usual. One more example. Mixed numbers. First step, change them into improper fractions. Change this, 2 1/4. That's 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. Use the same denominator. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. Same denominator. And see if we can simplify. The 9 and the 3. These both have a factor of 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And we multiply. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 1 is 4. This is an improper fraction. Let's change that into a mixed number. 4 goes into 15 3 times, so 3 wholes. That makes 12, so there's a remainder of 3, and we keep the denominator, 3 3/4. And that is it. Do a few problems for practice, so pause, and try these by yourself. I will show you these answers in about 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Check to see if you got these correct. If you didn't, please rewind the video and try to figure out what you did wrong. Okay, before we end here today, again, I want you to do 2 things. 1, reply on Edmodo on the quiz. Reply with a question that you have about this lesson. Or if you don't have any questions, respond to a question. And of course, take the quiz on Edmodo. That's it for today. See you tomorrow.